Hi guys, in today's video I have some classic Shayda Campbell content for you. We're going to be doing another hand lettering tutorial, so let's get started. Hey guys, I'm Shayda, and on this channel I do hand lettering tutorials, bullet journal, watercolor, all that good stuff. So if you're new here, consider subscribing if you haven't already. Okay, so in today's tutorial, we are going to be doing a hand lettering style that is a serif font. It starts as a serif font, and then once we kind of get the hang of this new lettering style, I am going to show you how you can change it around and make it into a sans serif. If you're confused about that, I have a lettering video all about typeface classification, and I'll link it in the description below. But basically, a serif font is a font with those lines that run perpendicular to the letter. So if you picture an I that's just a rectangle, that's probably a sans serif, so without serif. And a serif font would be an I that maybe has perpendicular lines at the top and the bottom. So basically, that's my very basic intro to serif sans serif. Watch the other video and join me now, because we're going to sort of tackle some different cool lettering styles that I think you'll really enjoy mixing with your cursive lettering styles. So let's just get to it. And actually, one more thing, I have a worksheet to go along with this lettering video, and I'm really excited because now you can get all of the extra channel content on my Patreon, and you don't have to pay for each worksheet, each printable. It's all available for only $2 a month. So go over there, get your worksheet, but watch the video first. So in today's hand lettering tutorial, I'm sharing this lettering style with you that I think is so versatile, and it really can turn out to be whatever you want it to be in many ways. So I'm just going to jump right in, and I think by the end of the tutorial you'll see what I mean. Now, my first piece of advice is to start off on graph paper. Lettering on graph paper, especially for your practice, just makes it so much easier. You don't have to get out the ruler nearly as often. And as you can see here, I'm doing a serif font. A serif is a font that has those little lines that I'm doing right now, sort of coming off the ends of the letter. Sans serif is a font that doesn't have those lines. And for my particular style here, I am making sure that all the strokes or parts of the letter that go vertically, they're thicker, and then the strokes that go horizontally, they're much thinner. So that's sort of the guidelines for doing these letters. Now, because I'm working on graph paper, it makes it really easy for me to lay down my guidelines. So let's talk a little bit about that before we go any further. So across the top here, I'm going to lay down a line, and that is my height line. Across the bottom, that is what is called the baseline. And then where the middle of the letter is, like where the cross on a T would be, that's called the waistline. Now, I think these guidelines are really helpful no matter what style of lettering you're doing, but especially for something that's not so fluid, for doing these serif letters, the guidelines are very helpful. So let's do a D here so that you can see how it works. The D starts at the baseline, stops at the height line, and of course the smaller part of the D starts at the baseline and stops at the waistline in the middle. And you'll see for a letter like C that isn't quite so tall, it also starts at the baseline, stops at the waistline. So by putting those guidelines in, you really set yourself up for success. Now, when you're doing a very structured serif font like this, not only do you want your baseline, height line, and waistline, but you also want to give yourself some guidelines for how big the letter is going to be. So you can see I'm writing in my letter E here, and I'm allowing the thicker part of that letter to be about the size of one whole block of squares. These are sort of 1 centimeter squares. So I can say each time the thick part of the letter, it's about 1 centimeter. And that helps me to make letters that look really uniform, and it just helps you to be so much more successful. I can't recommend graph paper enough. You can also say, okay, I'm going to put one line in between each letter, so it also helps with spacing. And of course, you can give yourself some vertical lines and say, in between these lines, that's where my letter is going to be. So here we go. I've got it in blue. Baseline, height line, waistline, and then the guidelines that help me to know where my letter should start and stop. I'm going to do the letter G, so I'm going right over to the right-hand side. The side of the G is going to be about 1 centimeter there, so about 1 block. And there you can see I've got a really nice uniform letter that fits in with the rest of them. Because this is a serif font, I simply add those little sort of, I don't know what to call them, lines, little wingdings on the end of each letter. You can see for the H, at the base and the top, I put these simple straight lines. And again, the graph paper helps so much to allow me to know how big should those lines really be, and I can use the graph paper as my guide. Let me go over this in pen so you can really see. So there's my lines that make it into a serif font, and you can see here how the graph paper helps me to know how wide should these vertical strokes really be, because the horizontal strokes are easy, they're thin, but you want those vertical strokes, the up and down bits of the letter, you want them to be quite uniform. You know, you don't want the H to be 0.5 centimeter thick and then the I to be a full centimeter because you made a mistake. So uniformity is going to be your best friend when you're looking for success in hand lettering. Next, let's go over some more of these letters in pen so you can really see what I'm talking about. So with the D here, I've got my vertical area of the letter that's about 1 centimeter thick, and I'm doing that according to the graph paper. And I'm going to fill this in with just some simple line shading, and this is something I go back to again and again. It's a nice way to fill in any thick letters. And I'm just going to write here that it goes starts at the baseline, goes up to the height line, the middle part of the letter stops or starts at that waistline. And let me see, I'm going to go over this in blue. I think you guys probably get this, but you can see here each thickened part, each vertical part of the letter that's thickened, it's all the same size, and I can do that and I can achieve that because of the graph paper, and the graph paper is super helpful. And I didn't know this for the longest time, but graph paper comes in all different sizes, so you can look for different sizes of squares and find the one that's best for you, or you could have a few different sizes and see about which one is the right one for the type of lettering that you're doing at the time. Has anyone caught my mistake yet? I missed thickening the E here on the right hand side. So it's easy to make that mistake. There's obviously 2 areas of that letter that are vertical, and so those both need to be thickened. However, that does get me thinking, well, there's no rules here. We're making up our own lettering styles as we go. So let's try something else. Let's try the same sort of serif style, but only thicken one side. See how different that is? Already we've created a different letter that maybe is better for the project that you're working on. So let's try it with the A. We'll thicken the right-hand side here, but we'll leave the left-hand side thin. And I think both look nice, but it just depends on the project that you're working on. I'll go over this in pen so you can see it a little more here. I actually really like the serif font with just the one side thickened, so I think that looks really cool. Now that we've done that, why don't we say, okay, we don't want this to be a serif font. We don't want those little lines. That's too fancy. So let's try the E again, but we're going to take off the little lines, the little wingdings. They're gone. So sort of a simpler lettering style here. We're still going to thicken that line. We'll leave the other side thin, and then there's no extra lines coming off the ends of the letter. So that would be a sans serif font. And I think it looks really cool. So you can see how easy it is with the graph paper, and with just a little bit of knowledge about different typefaces, you can really try different things. You can think, what's the right hand lettering style for me to use on this project? And I do have a video all about typeface classification, so serif, sans serif, cursive, and I will link that in the below the video. Now here I've laid down my guidelines, and I've put the waistline quite low, and I'm just going to draw an X, and just showing you guys here what you can do by simply having your guidelines done ahead of time and just sort of thinking about what you want to achieve before you even get started. So this would be quite a large letter with a very low waistline, and it gives a really cool look. And anytime you have that thick downstroke or thick vertical stroke, you're always free to fill it in however you want. And that really opens you up to creating all kinds of versatile and interesting lettering styles. So here I'm going to fill this X in by stippling, and I'm going to start really dark, so really close. The dots are all very, very close together, and then they get farther and farther apart as I go down, and it just gives this nice visual interest. Here I've used my pencil and graph paper to do the serif font that I started the video with, and I'm going to go over it in pen, and then we're going to add some detail that I think is really interesting and again really versatile. So I've got just the letters S and O. I'm thickening both vertical strokes there, both vertical parts of the letter. Now it always takes me a minute in pencil to work out the shape of the letter, especially in S. So take your time with your graph paper and pencil. Once you've gone over it in pen, you can erase it. And then here's the trick with this hand lettering style. You're going to take your artist pen and carefully make an inline just inside that blank part of the letter. Now just be very careful. A steady hand is key here because you want there to be white space between these lines, because once you fill them in, you want that nice white or negative space inline. So you can see what I'm doing here. And now that I've got those outlines, I'm going to fill this in, and it adds a wonderful detail to this letter. So the first one, I'm just going to fill it in black so you can really get the effect and see what I'm driving at here. And then for the next one, we're going to do some more interesting fill work. On the O, I'll start by just coloring it in really dark at the bottom, and then again I'm going to use my stippling technique. So starting with these dots that are really, really close together, and then letting them get farther and farther apart to create a look of lightning or shading within the letter. So this is quite detailed. It's great if you have a set of the Pigma Microns from Sakura or similar artist pens, because you want the different nib sizes so that you can achieve this fine detail. And on the other side of the O, I'm just doing that line shading again, same idea, starting close together for a look of darkness and finishing a little lighter at the top. So I hope you're getting a feel for how versatile this style can be. You can choose between serif and sans serif. Do you want to thicken both sides of a letter or just one? And then once you've got the style you like, if you've got that thickened stroke somewhere on the letter, you can fill it in all these different ways depending on the project. So let's try something a little more fun. Here you can see I'm working again with my graph paper and my pencil to write out the word T, and I'm just being careful to make sure that every letter is the same size, that every vertical stroke is the same size, and that they're equally spaced. And then once I've got my initial layout all done, I've put in the work of making sure everything looks uniform, then I'm going to go over it in pen and just make sure I like the look and the shape of the letters that I've drawn out. And they don't need to be perfect. This isn't about getting things perfect. You're not a computer, but it's just about making sure they're not, wonky or especially not spaced improperly. And then once you've gone over it in pen, you like the look of your lettering, we're going to again create that inline inside the thick part of the letter. So just steady hand, carefully doing that line. And then what we're going to do, we're going to extract this from our graph paper, and you can do that simply by tracing with thin computer paper, or maybe by putting this on a light table, or you can always trace using a window. And I'm just going here with a thin computer paper so I can actually see right through it, because I did go over the graph sketch in pen. And I'm just going to carefully go over everything again. Sometimes I find it helpful to do that inline with pencil, just so that I have something to follow. And yeah, I'm going to add something kind of fun inside of the lining on these ones. So with that negative space inside the letter just waiting for me to add something, I've decided I'll add some little flowers and leaves. I know, I'm obsessed with flowers and leaves. But this is just one more fun thing. I mean, you could draw anything in there. You could put like a little mountain scene or a starry night or a jungle, whatever you can imagine. And I'm just sort of doing a garden with these vines creeping up towards the top of the letter. I'm still going for that look that I used with the stippling and the line shading, where I'm sort of allowing the letter to breathe a little at the top and not quite filling it in all the way, so leaving a little negative space. And I think that leads me to something really successful and really pretty. And you can see me just filling in every letter here. I'm using one of my smaller nibs from in the Sakura set. So I've got a set of these 8 pens of archival quality inks, and the smallest nib I have is the 003, so it's really, really tiny, and that's what I'm using here, and it's perfect for doing these detailed leaf and flower illustrations. Okay, and that's what it looks like when it's pretty much all done. Thanks for watching today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this hand lettering video. It's been a while since we've done one. You can head over to patreon.com/Shayda Campbell and grab your worksheets. Everything over there is available for $2 a month. So these are a great way to practice your own lettering. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next week with a new tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe.